overview presentation. So that will be presented by Elena Steinbeiss and Summer Knight from Foster 360. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. Elena and Summer, the floor is yours, and we are grateful you are here. Thank you.
And you do now have quorum. I apologize.
We have
Chair.
quorum. We're going to postpone item number 4. I'm going to go back and kick off the meeting.
Apologies.
Thank everyone for joining this morning. You are here for the MAG Human Services and Community Initiatives Committee meeting. And so as a reminder, make sure that you turn your mics on and clearly state your name before speaking so we can keep accurate minutes and make sure that the audience can hear you. And then if you wouldn't mind, mute your mics when you're not speaking, kind of check that occasionally so we don't get any feedback or noise. And so we're going to take a roll call. Kelly will take over for that, and we will then get the meeting started. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Wally Campbell. Vice Mayor Ali Klein.
Here.
Councilmember Tina Condi. Vice Mayor Monica Dorsey. Vice Mayor Jen Duff.
Here.
Supervisor Steve Gallardo. Councilmember Betty Janik.
Here.
Garble on behalf of Joel Navarro.
Sorry about that. Here.
Thank you. Bill Patana. Rachel Sanders.
Here.
Amy Yentes. And Chair Mark Stewart.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Duff, nice to see you. Good to see you again yesterday. Thanks for being here.
Nice seeing you.
Yep. So we have a call to audience to item number 2. So there's an opportunity for public comment. This time, there were no comments from the public on this agenda. Are there any from the floor? Okay, great. Well, I'd love to take a motion for the approval of the minutes from July 14th. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for July.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Vice Chair Duff to approve the minutes, and I believe a second from Vice Mayor Klein from Surprise, Arizona. Thank you. On that motion and second, I'll take a vote. Well, why don't we just do this? If anybody's against approving the minutes, please speak up. If not, we'll move to affirmation there. Okay, the minutes are approved, and we'll move on to item number 4. So without further ado, we're going to jump the gun here a little bit, but now we have Elena Steinbeiss and Summer Knight from Foster 360 to provide some information for us. And I've been looking forward to this presentation since I saw the pre-meeting minutes or the pre-meeting notes. So the floor is yours, and we're super grateful you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. We're Summer and I are so grateful to be here as well, and are really excited about what we're doing and just being able to share what we're doing with you guys. So I'll go ahead and start if that's okay, Summer, unless you wanted to say something before we started.
No, we're good.
Okay, so so we're Foster 360. We're under the umbrella of Macy United Way. And so first we'll go ahead and start with the problem and why we're doing what we're doing. And so here are some statistics. The biggest one that we talk about is in Arizona, 900 young adults age out of the foster system each year. 50% will become homeless within 2 years. This has been the same statistic for the 6 years that I've been working in it. I don't know where it started, but it definitely hasn't changed. And I imagine that it's gotten worse. It's a problem. And the thing is, there's so many resources out there for this population. I worked with the workforce for many years and where we helped with education and we helped with jobs, but working with the foster population, we were just seeing that the help that was out there was not actually helping them. As you can see, only 3% are graduating from a post-secondary. So that means like after high school, right? Only 3% of that 900 are getting past post-secondary, which is just really sad. And homelessness is a huge issue. It's something I've dealt with working with the foster youth really on a weekly basis, which is just so unfortunate. And so the program that we have housing, but we like to say that we are a program first and housing second. And I'm going to go ahead and explain that a little bit. Is again, resources are so important, but what is going on with this population and why are they not able to take the help? And so we really came back to a blanket statement, which I'm not a fan of blanket statements, but this is one that I'll use. Anyone who has faced foster care has faced trauma. And the way that trauma works is it affects your brain in such a way that you're always in fight or flight, meaning, which is right, fight or flight is great if a bear is chasing after you or if you're in a boxing match, but every day it's not so great. And so these young adults who are not able to keep jobs, who are not doing well in school, are not able to build healthy relationships, they're doing everything that they're supposed to be doing with the way that their brain is working. And so we knew that, of course, housing is so important. It has to, right? We have to keep a safe roof over their head, keep them in the same place so we can help them. But we really needed to tackle the trauma to make real change for these young adults. And so Summer, I'll go ahead and have you start from there.
Yeah. So one thing about trauma is the way that it presents at times. And if any of you have worked in trauma, what the world sees with these kids is unmotivated, disrespectful. They just don't want to do the work. And what we know and what we always share with people is think of the worst possible thing that could happen to a child. Then times it by 100, and you might be close to their story, but you won't even be able to fathom the terror and the horrific things that these kids have done to survive. And so our program, like Elena said, is based around trauma. We are very counterculture on how we do things. We provide, when they first come in, a rest period, and we use resources and we raise money so that the kids actually don't do anything when they first come in, besides work on their nervous system. We know that all of these kids are survivors. They can get jobs, they can find a place to live, but why aren't they keeping it? Why aren't they able to make flourishing relationships? Why are they not able to finish school? Why are they not able to keep a job? And it goes down to that root cause of trauma. And so something we want to share with you guys is just some of the things we're seeing through our trauma work that we're doing. Every kid that comes into our program gets a generalized anxiety disorder test. All of our kids, every single one of them, they score severe on their anxiety test. Within 1 to 3 months of working on nervous system and trauma integration work, all of our kids score either mild to none on their anxiety. Panic attacks are no longer happening. They're able to have clear functioning thought processes. And this is without any medication intervention. Our program is not against medication intervention, but what we always do first is let's get that nervous system calm. Every kid that has sleep paralysis that comes into our program from their trauma experiences within 3 months, no more having sleep paralysis. Suicidal ideation is completely gone, and we're able to move into stages of planning and dreaming. A lot of our kids, when they talk to us, will tell us things like, this is the first birthday I feel I deserve to be alive. We had a kid who came into us. He actually came from Chicago. He was in the foster care system. His twin brother actually found our program first. His anxiety was so high, his lips would turn purple when he would speak to us. All we worked on is calming that nervous system and just doing integrative care around that. After the 3 months happened, we were able to get him involved in the YMCA with Elena's help and all of her expertise in that. And he did his GED. He passed his GED in 1 month. And this is a kid, when people first met him, told us, hey, I don't think this kid has what it's going to take. And all of that was based around his trauma. We had a kid who entered our program and she was kicked out of every single housing resource in the Valley due to being violent. She was raised in a home where the family used violence as a way of discipline. She would go to school and she would get into disagreements with kids, and her dad would tell her that she needed to show them that she was the strong one. And so he would hit her every day when she came home from school if she hadn't gotten in a fight with that kid who disrespected her. That's how she saw conflict resolution. Like I said, she got kicked out of every shelter, every possibility. We were her last stop. She was with us for 5 months, and in 5 months, she never had one violent outburst. And at the end of her time with us, she sat and said, I had no idea that this woman was inside of me the entire time. And so what we're doing in our program is to recognize that we are looking at a whole person. A lot of times we umbrella homelessness as one thing, and we do it with foster care, it's one thing. But as you guys can see with the problem we're solving, what is that problem really causing for people, and why is that problem even there? And for us, what we see is it's trauma. And so for our program specifically, we are focusing on the trauma and we're seeing the miracles. We are at full capacity with 10 kids right now. All of them have been with us for most of them over 4 months, and some of them longer than that. Every single one of our kid currently is either in an internship or moving into full-time employment and looking for those options, as well as entering into school. A lot of our kids are so sitting there with us and saying, I'll be the first person in my family to even think about going to school or getting post-secondary. And half of our kids right now are currently seeking those options out. Another thing that we have found in our program is there is a link with what our kids have endured between the domestic violence at home in their original home and now that there's brain injuries. And so when we get those nervous systems calmed, we actually do a help screening when we notice there's some cognitive changes that are just not there, because trauma can really present like a brain injury with our thinking patterns, our executive functioning. And so now we have an actual contract, an official MOU with Barrow Neurological Institute, where they're using their domestic violence grant to treat our kids. And so we actually had, and I want Elena to share this story, we had a kiddo who returned to us who graduated after 12 months, a little earlier than we would have wanted, went back into the real world, called us up and said, hey, I want to come back. But Elena, do you want to talk a little bit about his story?
Sure. And my mind's all over the place, but Jaden is someone I've helped for really the 6 years I've been working with aging out foster youth. And we knew he came out of the system. He was having difficulty. He was homeless when I first started helping him. But he never really talked about the trauma, really didn't get much work there, but had all sorts of resources when it came to paid internships, work, and school. But we would see over the years he would do really well, and then all of a sudden he'd kind of crash. And honestly, you couldn't get a hold of him for days on end. And it was the same thing, but then we'd get really excited because he'd do really well again. And so finally, he's in a place to work on himself. He's come back to us. He was able to open up really to Summer and myself about his past and the things that have happened to him. And it's just beautiful because I feel so happy because I know that we can help them. I've been in this work for a long time, and the Band-Aids are needed, keeping them safe is needed, but I know we can create real change in him to where he's going to be a model citizen. He's going to be a model parent to his future kids someday. And that's the change we want to see. One thing I want to say, we keep saying trauma and that we're around trauma work, but the beautiful thing that we have to say is even though trauma affects your brain in such a way, you don't have to be stuck in that. No one has to be stuck in it. And that's the work we're doing. You can actually create new neural pathways. And that's the curriculum that we've written, is to work on the trauma, to get them in a place where their anxiety is not debilitating, where they have tools to work on their nervous system. And then, then education can be successful. Then work can be successful. And that is what we're seeing. Summer told you we had the young adult who passed GED in a month, which is unheard of. That doesn't happen. And so he is very intelligent. And now we're able to place him in a job as an electrician, which is so exciting while he's going to school at the same time. And there's even more possibilities for him. We have another young man who is going to school at Mesa Community College, and he wants to become a plumber. And so we have now been able to reach out to the community and get him a paid internship as with a plumbing company. And these things don't happen for this population. But again, the reason we're different, because there is other housing out there, there is other transitional housing, but we're giving these young adults a rest period and time to really focus on that trauma work. And we're seeing it sevenfold come back to us, because the change that they make while they're with us is then they're able to do all the other things that are out there. And I guess we didn't mention it, but we are a program. We say we're really going to be ending up to be a 2 to 3 year program. We're an empowerment program, and our biggest goal is for these young adults to never be homeless again. And that is, we want to change that number of 50% becoming homeless within 2 years. And also, as I'm sure you guys know, because of what you do, that the youth who are in homelessness end up being the chronically homeless. And so 33% of chronically homeless come out of the foster system. And so we need to start, or I like to shout it out, but I really do believe we need to start thinking as foster and homelessness in the same thing. Because I know when I read numbers out there about homeless, they do talk about veterans, but I rarely see the talk about foster or the numbers behind it. But as you can see, they are a huge population in that homelessness. And we are in the business of making change and getting them while they're in the youth and really giving them the lives that they deserve.
Yeah, and we, as you guys can see with this slide, and then if you want to go to the slides of the kids, so we can talk a little bit about that. But when we think about homelessness and we think about aged out foster youth, we are dealing with multiple societal issues that just putting them on the streets without a resource like this is really stripping us as a community from our future leaders. These kids have survived things that I'll never, and thank God I'll never have to know how to survive those things. That's a privilege I get to hold. But these are the kids that they're living and they're choosing life every day, despite what's happened to them. And what a beautiful thing to be able to see them as a whole person and help them see how they can be a part of this community the way their life was intended to be. We also have pictures of the kids and kind of the workshops we do here, but what's really also beautiful about our program is that these are some of our youth and they're doing trauma yoga there. Is that the communities really come beside us to really invest in our kids. We have multiple partnerships in the community. Junior Achievement's one of them. And something that's really cool about that is Junior Achievement has been doing the same curriculum for 100 years to help people with financial literacy and different things like that. They started coming and working with our kids. And then when we met with them and they said, yeah, our stuff isn't working for them. And we met with them and we said, would you be willing, you guys are the experts in them, but would you be willing to look at how we could shape this for aged out foster youth and kids that are, didn't raise with families and all that different stuff. So the first time in 100 years, Junior Achievement is changing curriculum specifically to be able to help our population. And it's been a really beautiful thing to see what happens when the community shows up and does these things, because it's not just our program that's going to help change and pave the way forward for them. It's going to take everybody in our community to be able to come around them and to remind them that they're not forgotten, that they matter to us and that their life matters to us.
I'd say, Summer, this is a point where we'd love for you guys to ask questions if you have any, and we'd love to answer anything that you guys have for us.
Well, Elena and Summer, that was a great presentation, great information for us to all hear and be aware of. It sounds like you're doing amazing work, and the fact that we're able to share that with the rest of the folks on this call, what you're doing is incredible. I'll open it to the floor for folks that may have questions or want to connect. So go ahead.
This is Vice Mayor Duff. I'll just jump in if that's okay. I just wanted to thank you for this critical work that you are doing and making a huge difference in the outcome of these people's lives, of course. And, the upstream work of preventing homelessness, which is a huge problem for all our cities and our society, and it's so important. Now, I know you have this one campus in Phoenix. Are there others? How many youth go through the program? How long do they usually stay?
Sure. So we have capacity on the Culver campus for 10 young adults, and we are at capacity. Our wait list, so even to be on our wait list, they go through an interview. It's at 25 right now. So that's 25 homeless youth, because they are homeless actually before they come to us. And that's ever growing. I'm sure Jen, we are in talks with Mesa to possibly and hopefully get another location. So we do plan on opening another location within the next 6 months. If Mesa doesn't happen, we're really hoping that it does, but if it doesn't happen, then we are in talks with Nancy Marion. She would love for us to take some of her properties as well. And so that is kind of our backup if Mesa doesn't happen, to open, and we could fill another location actually today if we needed to with the young adults that are on our waiting list. And as I said earlier, we are changing kind of the time, because we originally thought that it would be an 18 to 24 month program for these young adults. But we are now seeing that with the trauma work first happening, and then the wraparound service with work and education, that they might need to stay with us a little longer, because with our whole goal being that they can leave our program and get their own place. As you guys, I'm sure, know, things are very expensive right now. It's not the easiest time to live in our community. So what we would like to see is for these young adults to get their education, get into a trade or a job where they're making more than minimum wage or enough to, to be able to have a life. And then they leave. And so we're thinking that it's going to be upwards of probably 3 years for them to really do everything that they need to do. And that kind of goes in accordance with even young adults, right? If we think our own 18-year-olds, while they're going to college and kind of getting off on their feet, they're just going to need a little extra support.
And for our Jen, to answer part of how long our kids are staying, we have kids that have been here almost the entire time Culver's been open. And we've had kids that have now made over the year mark, but we have had some kids after 5 or 6 months, not a lot, maybe 3 or 4, that got to that 6-month mark and decided that this just wasn't their priority and they needed to make an exit. But we are seeing that our turnaround, because we're being trauma informed, and we have rules and regulations, but it's very based on safety and not necessarily like this is the stopping point, because we know kids with trauma self-sabotage. They're purposely going to want to get kicked out, because better for me to reject you than you to reject us. So there are behaviors that happen that in other programs they would be kicked out, and we don't do that. So we've had a couple though that get to that 5-6 month, and it's because of choices that they want to make long term. It doesn't align with the program, but we're seeing that very few. A lot of the kids we've had have been here for a very long time now, and compared to other programs, the turnaround is much less.
Well, I love your program, and I would love to see you everywhere throughout the valley. And I know that resources are, and it looks promising in Mesa, and I hope to have you in this very short distance here from City Hall. But what I also love about this is that we're stopping generational trauma. So kids that are abused are often abusing their own kids. And so it's just this endless cycle. So I wish you the best. And what kind of resources do you need in order to expand?
Yeah, that's always the $1 million question. Obviously, first and foremost is money is a big one, right? Housing options is just as equally as important. And then different supports that trickle down. Elena, do you want to kind of share some of that stuff?
Sure. And what Summer was talking about, right, is we always want to make sure that we're sustainable for these young adults. And and so that is right, properties and funding. But we do help the young adults with basic needs, especially when they first start. We like to see them be able to do things and empower them to buy their own things. But in the very beginning, we absolutely help with like Fry's gift cards. And then we help with, right, toilet paper, shampoo, and kind of just all the basic cleaning supplies as well. If we do open another campus, then of course, furniture, furnishing the houses, because all of the apartments are fully furnished for the young adults before they move in, is going to be something that we're going to need to look at as well. And then someone, do you want to mention, we're always looking for more community members too. So we have all sorts, we have a lot of life skills we work on the young adults with. So the people we bring in usually stay with us for at least a year, but we do cooking skills, like financial skills, you name it, we want to do it. And then also just having businesses that we can partner with. And that's for the young adults who do want to get into trades as electricians or plumbers or IT. So just really having a community surrounding us, we know is the biggest deal, because we can't do this by ourselves.
Yeah, and to add on to what Elena said about community is thinking through the holistic side of this for our kids and their resources available to them. You know, some of our kids need to be able to meet with a nutritionist due to their diabetes, and with their insurance, they have to wait a long time. And sometimes it's not always the best provider. And so just being able to have those types of holistic health community partners where they'd be willing to come in and do some education for our kids and provide that support that they're not always able to get in a timely manner.
This is Councilwoman Betty Janik. Hopefully Ms. Duff is done speaking. No more questions from her. First of all, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful service, and it shows the strength of the human spirit to go through all that trauma at an early age, to be able to come out of it and with enough guidance to become functional members of society, to feel good about themselves. So a couple questions I have. Number one, how long has your program been in existence?
Sure. So Foster 360, again, under Macy United Way, has been around a little over 5 years. They do field navigation for the first couple years. And doing field navigation, you truly understand, again, with the amount of homelessness that you're dealing with in the foster population, that you have to have housing to really help these young adults.
Right.
And so that has been around, we're almost at 2 years. And so, and it's changed, and it's gonna, again, our program, we hope to always have change for the better. So thank you. We're really proud of what we're doing. And we also would love to see more of our programs around the state, and even helping other populations, because trauma doesn't just affect foster. I mean, you think, all homelessness, right? It's not that homeless people just need to go get a job and then they're going to be okay. There's some issues there that we think would benefit them as well, all people.
How do you get the applicants? Is it through people that deal with the homeless that they refer to you? Do you get direct referrals from the foster care system? How does that interchange work?
Yeah, all of the above. Most of our referrals come through DCS, and that's just, and it's really word of mouth. Working in the community, I think people get to know who you are, and so it's a lot of the same case managers. Once they see how the young adults are doing, they start kind of sending over all the young adults they know. We actually have had young adults reach out to us living in their car, so there have been self-referrals, community referrals come to us, and so we get it from everywhere for sure.
And then when the students kind of graduate from your program, you provide wraparound services. Are you able to provide housing, which to me seems like one of the basic necessities they need in order to move on and succeed?
We actually do aftercare program. So we have kids that have gone through our program because we had one that graduated after 12 months, and because it's very rare, but she was one of the ones that needed less support based on how much time she had with a family and foundation before things turned different for her situation. So she's in our aftercare program. We have another gentleman in our aftercare program. So we still follow up and just do little tune-ups is what we call them. But a lot of that work of getting them ready to leave is savings. And one of the things we didn't mention is we actually have created curriculum around financial literacy with a trauma-informed lens. We worked with a financial therapist because we found one research article that showed if you have childhood trauma, there's a link between childhood trauma and financial trauma. And so we found a financial therapist that we work together to bring in a trauma lens of how do we, because our kids, it's very hard for them to talk about finances. And so we do all of that kind of work with them before they leave and research apartments. But part of that when they're ready is this is what the real world costs and how do we get you prepared for that? And then again, we follow up through doing tune-ups. We've only had 2 kids so far, obviously with the length of our program, and they were individuals who needed a little less than some of the other kids we're working with. But that's what we've done, and that's our goal to continue molding that further.
And as you
Okay.
said, Betty, another, I mean, it's really fun when we get to the point with the young adults where we can start planning for that. And so that's with the savings, like how much did you have in savings? How much does it cost to live for a year? And then even to talk about starting to look into programs for first-time home buyers. I mean, that's really like, that
Mhm.
excites me. So we are looking into all those programs. Do we have partnerships there? No, we don't. So it's really just our research of helping each individual where they're at.
Okay, thank you. Great program. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The great questions. We have a couple more hands up. Councilmember Navarro, I don't know if you were next, but you want to go ahead?
I appreciate it. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the time. Guys, this is great information. Good to know. My question is this: you say you connect with the other resources to get people in the system. Are you connecting with city resources like Care 7 for Tempe, CR program with the city of Phoenix? What city resources are you guys connecting with? And the reason why I say this is I know the city of Phoenix, I work with the Phoenix Fire Department, is trying to work with CAS and trying to figure out solutions, obviously. So we've kind of been tasked with a little bit of that along with Care Set with our CR program over there. But how do we stay connected, or how do you guys stay connected with those entities? Because often we'll get a person at the time they called 911 wanting help, and then it's a short window, so to speak, to get them to the right location. Are you guys engaged in those resources?
So, and Elena will talk on this too, because we both are integral in that. So one, how we find out about stuff like you're saying, how do we stay connected, is when people like you to let us know resources out there that maybe we're not aware of. So that's super helpful for us. And then we meet with people to say, hey, how could this work? We just had a meeting with Midwestern because they found out about us, and they have a really beautiful grant program through the occupational therapy side that actually would really benefit our kids long term in different ways, especially with our kids that have brain injuries. And so people connecting us is a huge way. The other way is based on what we're trying to do from an empowerment perspective for our kids, because the whole thing here is how do we connect them to the right resources, right? There's emergency resources that are super important for people who don't have a program supporting them. And then there's the resources that, hey, this resource is going to empower you and help you long term for what you need. So that's kind of how our lens goes through that. Elena, do you want to speak a little more about that?
Sure. And like Summer said, it really is either just people we've met in the community and we've kind of brought alongside of us, or people reaching out to us. We definitely take advantage of WIOA because that's something that I'm familiar with and have worked with. So we work with different workforces that are out there. But as far as city, it's really just the city of Phoenix. We had a good friend, Sergio Gomez, who is in charge of educating the Phoenix area on domestic violence and other issues pertaining to that. And so we've worked with him personally a lot, but that was because it was a personal relationship. Do we need more city ties and relationships? Yes. So please, all of you, email us if you're interested.
Don't assume that we know, please.
Yeah,
Seriously.
Because we definitely know of some resources, but we really don't have many tied specifically to the city or any of the cities.
Yeah. A lot of our resources are moving towards, brain injury, different things like that, financial literacy, long-term, emotional intelligence for kids, and giving them some of those foundational blocks they didn't get as children. So like Elena said, with the work we do, we are still learners, and we still just need the support of the community to say, hey, maybe they know, maybe they don't, but I'm going to pass this along. And maybe this is something that would support their program.
No, that'd be perfect. I think it's maybe it's on the cities to connect with MAG, and MAG's connect with you guys to like, hey, let's make this partnership happen. Here's some other additional resource. I know that for Care 7 and for the city of Phoenix, Care 7 in Tempe and the city of Phoenix Fire with their community resource vans, just having that collective ability out there would be great. And it's funny, I was just doing looking at a questionnaire because we're trying to track data down within the fire department in the homeless community of maybe putting a foster question in there Has this person been in the
Yeah.
foster system? And that way we can keep track of that and have that information out there too. So got me at a great time.
Oh, you know,
thank
actually,
you for
yeah.
telling us.
Yeah, even saying that, that's great because that's what we need is to show those numbers. Because even in counting the homeless each year, I don't think foster is including in that. So if we could make some of those changes to at least show the numbers, because that's what people want, right? They want to see numbers and data. So that's definitely some help that would be great towards what we're trying to do.
And it brings awareness, right? We only pay attention to what's in front of us. So if the data's not there, that's not our concern. So all of it is really helpful in the empowerment and the awareness of this population.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. You know, Tempe is absolutely, I think, a front runner in using data to make decisions. It seems like every time we're talking about Tempe, they're looking into those things. But you know, I think what Joel mentioned was extremely important as it relates to getting your information out to the various cities. Kelly, would you be able to make sure that you gather information from them, distribute that to the cities within MAG, so that the neighborhood services or whatever that group is within those cities have access to this? One other question that I have, if there's not any others, is, you know, we have our own sort of navigator program and homeless program where we house and try to get, like you mentioned earlier, you know, that first part of the getting help or helping is that rest period, right? And we found that is significant for any of our homeless. Now, we don't break down the demographics as it relates to foster care or not, but we would certainly be interested in learning more about that. But is your system, is your curriculum, or the program, as you mentioned, was first, we have housing. We don't have programs necessarily. Can you plug and play your program, or is that something you're looking at for the future where one of our navigators can use your program initially and then maybe transfer so we can scale this?
That's our goal is
yes.
absolutely is because here's the thing, people, and we all do this, right? Like, oh, foster care is its own thing and veterans are its own thing, but really it's trauma. And then we have individuals, how they got their trauma, which all feeds into homelessness. So the work we do is plug and play. It's the resources that need to be equipped to the specific demographic. And so the resources are different than the trauma piece. The trauma piece is a plug and play for anybody who has trauma.
And we would love to help with that. Yeah, that, like Summer said, that's actually a big wantingness of ours and a big goal is because we get to see the miracles. We do get to see it working. And it sounds like, you know, right? Putting people, the rapid rehousing, I use that for a lot of young adults program. What a great program there is. The unfortunate part of it is these young adults aren't staying in that housing, even with it starting off free, right? They're not staying in the housing. So how do you get them to stay in the housing? And that's where we say program first, housing second. And yes, yes, and yes, if we could help in any way, other programs, we'd love to do that.
Thank you. Well, let's take that as an action item to get that information out. And you know, if there's not any further questions, just thank you. Thank you for sharing this and kind of opening our eyes to what's going on and sharing the data that you have and also the success stories. I think it's important for us to hear.
Thank you guys for having us. Kelly, thank you for hearing about our work and bringing this to MAG and really reaching out, because it means a lot for us to get to share what we're doing from the support aspect and just to bring awareness, because like Elena said, and it's our heart, is we want to help as many people as we can. It doesn't always have to be just for foster kids and Foster 360, like that's where our heart is. But our real big heart is how do we help anyone facing homelessness and how do we get this out about trauma and the work that is doing.
That's a perfect close. Thank you so much for sharing. Take care. All right, folks. You know, homelessness, housing, it's a great transition into item number 5. We have Maggie Wong with MAG here today to share some information about economic trends within the housing market. And we'd love to turn the floor over to you, Maggie. And thanks for being here. And take it away.
Thank you. Just give me 1 second to share my screen. Is that working for everybody?
Yes, Maggie, it looks great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Good morning. My name is Maggie Wong. I'm a research analyst with the regional analytics team here at MAG. Happy to be here this morning to share some trends with you all. We're actually going to start with some demographic trends for the region. So this slide is showing the change from 2010 to 2020 using decennial census data for these three geographies, Maricopa County, Arizona, and the US. So at a glance, you can see that Maricopa County saw a higher rate of growth in almost all three of these categories compared to the state and nation. Maricopa County actually added more residents than any other county in the nation and accounts for 80% of Arizona's population growth. So that's a significant amount. We're a fast-growing region. Maricopa County population increased 15.8%. That's a higher rate than the state at 12% and the US at 7%. The number of adults 18 and older also increased at a higher percentage, 20.4% from 2010 to 2020. And percent minority increased by 5 percentage points, slightly lower than the US, but if you look at the actual numbers rather than just the change, Maricopa County has a higher percent minority population than the state and nation. So we're going to take a closer look at that on this next slide, looking at also known as BIPOC population. So now we're looking at the entire region of the Phoenix metro area or the Phoenix MSA, which includes both Maricopa County and Pinal County. So 45.3% of the population in the region is BIPOC. This map here on the right shows areas with higher and lower percentage BIPOC population. So the green areas and the yellow areas are lower concentration, whereas the darker purples are higher concentration. And then you can see there's a table there that shows a breakdown by race. So 2% are Native American, 5% are Black or African American, and 31% are Hispanic. And percent BIPOC is higher for the Phoenix metro area than for the US. The US has 40% of the population identifying as BIPOC. We also took a look at poverty for the region. So in the Phoenix MSA, 12.7% of the population is in poverty. And this map is showing areas with a higher percent as the darker teal colors. Those areas that are almost Black areas have more than 50% of the population in poverty. And what we're seeing is that 64% of the population in poverty in the MSA is BIPOC. So that was just a bit of a demographics overview. Now we'll take a look at a snapshot of the economy. Starting with some good news, the unemployment rate for the Phoenix MSA is actually a little lower than the US. So on this chart, the MSA is blue while the US is the gray line. Phoenix metro area is at 2.8% as of July of this year, while the US is at 3.5%. And we can see that the unemployment rate definitely spiked up during the pandemic, but has pretty much settled back down and is doing pretty good. Looking at inflation, the Phoenix metro area is the green line, while the US is still the gray line. Our inflation rate has generally been higher than the national average and is increasing. Year over year for August, there was a 13% increase in consumer price index for the Phoenix metro area compared to the US, which saw an increase of 8.3%. So, and we can see that for our region, there seems to be an upwards trend, whereas the US saw a bit of a decrease in the past few months.
Maggie?
Oh, yes.
Chairman Stewart, do we know why that is? Is it energy, or do we know what the background is? Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. It's actually something we're still looking into. That's why we didn't have it in here. We were trying to look into what was driving that. It could be energy. We were suspecting maybe construction. So we don't have that at this time, but we're definitely going to look into it. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely many factors that could have played into this. We're going to move on to looking at housing construction. So the housing industry really changed after a downturn in 2007. This chart here is showing the number of residential completions in Maricopa County, which is data collected from our member agencies. You can see in the early 2000s, it was an average of about 40,000 completions per year, hitting a peak of 48,000 in 2005. After the downturn in 2007, it declined to 6,600 at the worst of the downturn. That was in 2011, but it has been slowly increasing since then, reaching just under 28,000 units in 2021. If we take a look at kind of the past 2 decades, the first 11 years, so from 2000 to 2010, this first section over here, you can see there was a total of 389,000 residential completions. It has dropped about 43% from this decade to the next. You can see that from 2011 to 2021, there were only 220,000 units, which is lower than the previous decade. Now we'll take a closer look specifically at residential completions for apartments. So a lot of apartments have been built. We're seeing a kind of a similar pattern to what we saw before, but still a little bit different. There was a low of 230 apartment units in 2011, but it recovered pretty well, actually. You can see it's increased since then to be around 7,000 each year since 2015. And if we kind of look at those 2 decades once again, the amount of apartments being built stayed fairly constant. From 2000 to 2010, it was 63,000. From 2011 to 2021, it was around just under 61,000. So it's a lot closer than what we were seeing in the total units. In the previous slide, we saw that the total units dropped right between those 2 decades. And actually, it's not shown here, but single family units also declined in share. So apartment units have actually increased in share by about 11% from decade to decade. Vacancy rate is another metric to keep an eye on, looking at what's going on with the vacant housing units. On this slide, you can see the numbers above each bar show the overall vacancy rate, and then the gray part of each bar shows the seasonal rate. So we actually want to exclude those units and focus on the blue bars. That's our net vacancy rate. And there has definitely been a drop from 12% back in 2010, now down to 5%. So it's looking like we don't have a lot of vacant units available. Now, something we've seen and heard over time is that the median sales price has increased, and that's definitely something we're seeing in the data. This chart here, the teal line is showing the past year, so July 2021 to July of 2022, and then the gray line is showing the previous year, so that's July of 2020 to July of 2021. We're seeing a 12% increase year over year, but if you compare July 2022 to July of 2020, it's actually a 44% increase. And single family median sales price is higher. This right here, this chart is showing overall median sales price. For single family, it's around $500,000 right now. Interest rates have gone up and the mortgage rate has increased about 3% since 2020. On the left here, this chart is showing that inventory listed for sale has gone up 92%. At its lowest, it was at about 8,000 and is now over double that. On the right, average numbers of days on market is starting to trend up from 28 to 33 days. So we're seeing that the market is not as hot. We're moving from a seller's to a buyer's market at this time. Something interesting that we've noticed from our analysis too is that about 34% of sales were done in cash across the region. Back in 2011, it was 48% of sales, down to 16% in like mid 2020, and now at 1 in 3 sales being in cash. And these cash sales are across the board in all price ranges across the region. Over the past 5 years, the average has been about 25% of sales that were cash. A lot were investors, probably people moving from out of state. And these cash sales are putting upward pressure on housing prices. Looking at our housing stock, 26% of it is either seasonal or investment owned. That's about 364,000 units in the region. So they're paying higher for these homes. They may be buying multiple properties at once. These could be large institutional investors buying homes for rent. And we have data on homeowner locations. That's how we got this. So we can see where the mailing address is not the same as the property address. What we're seeing is that 52% are from our owners within Maricopa County. And this map on the right is showing properties owned by people outside of Arizona and outside of the US. So 42% of housing stock has owners from other states. That's the blue on the map. The top 5 states, including California, Washington, Texas, Illinois, and Colorado. And then 4% are internationally owned. So those are the red properties on the map, with by far the top country being Canada. Another potential disruptor is short-term rentals. So you're thinking Airbnbs, Verbos, and our analysis looks specifically at full homes that are up for short-term rental, not just one room being rented. So this here is showing for the Phoenix metro area, 1.2% of the housing stock in the region is being used for short-term rental. That's about 23,000 units. For comparison, for the whole state, 42,000 units are being used for short-term rental. That's about 1.4% of the statewide housing stock. And on the right here, you can see we've got a little table showing the top 15 jurisdictions by percent of the housing stock being used for short-term rental. Across the state, the number one jurisdiction is actually Sedona. 27% of the housing stock there is short-term rental. But for our region, the top jurisdiction is Paradise Valley with 5.9% of their housing stock being used for short-term rentals, followed by Scottsdale and Cave Creek, both at 4.3%. So moving to the rental market and looking at apartments, this chart is showing apartment rent over time. The colors are representing rent bins. So we're looking at what percent of apartment units fall in what ranges of rent. If you focus on the darker blue parts of the bars, that's the percent of apartment units with rent under $500. It's completely unavailable at this point. It's dropped from around 20% back in 2010 to virtually non-existent in the past few years. And then if we want to look at apartment units with rent under $1,000, that would be the light green and the dark blue parts of the bar together. That has actually dropped more than 80% since 2010. So it's pretty clear here that with rent increasing, it's getting harder to find affordable units. We looked at pricing on apartments built pre and post 2018, and there is a gap in pricing. Newer apartments are charging 25% higher than all existing apartments. Obviously, this could be affecting affordability, driving the rest of the market up as they increase their rent, and then also as vacancy rate is lower. We also have data showing where the increase in rent is happening. So this map is showing rent change for apartment complexes across the region that have 50 or more units. So in green, those are apartment complexes where there's been an up to 50% increase. And then orange and red is showing areas with 75% or more rent increase. Overall, since 2017, apartment rent has gone up 68%. And then as of Q1 of this year, median rent is $1,580. So going back to the sales side of things, kind of a similar story to what we're seeing with apartment rent. So now we're looking at sales transactions by pricing bins in these different colors. So we'll start with the lowest category, which is the dark blue color once again. There are very, very few sales transactions that are under $200,000 these days compared to 2011. And if we include the light green color with the dark blue, we're looking at sales under $300,000. That dropped from around 90% back in 2010 to around 15% as of this year. That's a decrease of 75%. This slide is showing a change in sale price geographically. So the darker blue and navy areas are where there was 130% or more increase in the median sale price. We overlaid those orange kind of dashed areas, which are showing places where 25% or more of the population is below poverty. And what we're seeing here is that these areas with more poverty saw a larger increase in median sales price. So from 2017 to 2022, the median sale price overall increased 93%. But in areas of poverty, there was a 126% increase, which is quite a bit higher. And on the topic of affordability, we've also been looking at cost burden households. So these are households that are paying 30% or more of their household income on housing costs, whether that's mortgage or rent. The map shows the percentage of households paying more than 30% in different areas. So the areas with darker red are places where more than 45% of households are cost burdened. Across the region, 518,000 households are cost burdened. And then of that, 230,000 households are severely cost burdened. And that means they're spending more than 50% of their income on housing. And we also see that a significant majority of these cost burden households have a median income below $75,000. So this chart here shows cost burden by household type. The slide before, we were looking at all households, so that would be the gray line on this chart. And you can see that 30% of total households are cost burdened. This green line is showing owner households. So you can see that they have the lowest percent of households that are cost burdened if you're looking at it by type. And then the renter households have a higher likelihood of being cost burdened. So 39% of single family renter households are cost burdened, while 50% of multifamily renter households are cost burdened. Another piece to this is taking a look at our workforce. So in our region, the economy is growing. We are attracting businesses, but to support them, we need the service sector. So for the purpose of our analysis, we included these categories of food prep, building and ground maintenance, healthcare support, and personal care. So what we did is that we looked at households that are anchored by these occupations, meaning that the primary occupation, the highest paid occupation in the household, was in one of these categories. For those households, the annual median income is $39,000 to $50,000. So the max rent or mortgage that would be affordable to them, so that would be about 30% of their income, would be $990 to $1,250 a month. So for these households, 43 to 50% of these households are cost burdened. And this just shows that certain households with specific occupations are more cost burdened. We also took a look at Census Household Pulse Survey, and we specifically were looking at households with income below $50,000. 65% of renter households saw a rent increase, and then 18% of renter or owner households making less than $50,000 are not caught up on rent or mortgage. And evictions are increasing again, and they're actually higher than pre-pandemic numbers as of July. Pre-pandemic, the number was around 5,000 filings a month, which you can see kind of in the gray here. And then in blue, you can see how evictions were affected by the pandemic and the eviction moratoriums that were put in place. The major dip was in April and May of 2020, but it started to increase again as the moratoriums were removed and has continued to increase, reaching a total of 6,300 filings in July of this year. We actually also just got August evictions data. We're still processing and finalizing those numbers, but it looks like it's continuing to trend up with a total of around 6,500 filings in August. So it's continuing to increase. We've also run an analysis of evictions compared to census data and found that 72% of these eviction filings are in lower income areas, which for this analysis we defined as block groups with median household income under $65,000. All right, so this is my last slide and it has a lot of text, but basically just wanted to provide some information on research we've been doing surrounding what is the housing shortage. It's a very difficult question to answer. Here we're showing 3 different sources and it's a pretty wide range of estimates from as low as 11,000 units to 100,000 units or more. Where we're at is that we just don't think we have good enough data to be answering these types of questions. There are a lot of factors and a lot of assumptions that need to be made. And we have a lot of questions about these numbers that we found and the different methodologies behind it. What we do know is that there's definitely a lack of housing choice in the region, based on location, type of housing, access to services, and there's definitely an affordability issue. It would just take a lot more to get numbers, so it's not something that our team is able to do at this time. But we know that peer metros have been putting out some pretty interesting housing reports and working on different analysis as well. So there's a lot to learn from them, and that's something that we are also exploring. With that, I'll wrap up my presentation. We have a lot more data and tools available at the links on this last slide, and I'll open it up to some questions now. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Maggie, that so much data. And, I think that's going back to our last slides, right? Was, trying to make decisions on what we can do from a data perspective. And obviously supply chain is an issue. So overall inventory is an issue. I was shocked to see how many STRs, short-term rentals, from Maricopa County, as well as investment properties. Like I was just seeing those numbers, thinking, oh my gosh, if we could just drop, 25% of those numbers into the inventory mix, what that would do to affordability, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems to me that when I looked at the data, it's just literally the builds aren't there. And did that mean, did a lot of builders go out of business in the 08, 09 timeframe when we had that housing crash and it just didn't come back online?
It's possible because, we see that it really slowed, right? One thing that didn't make it into this presentation, though, is that there are a lot of active developments, like I want to say like 100,000 to 200,000, but it's still not matching, that previous decade. So that's something to be looked into more as well.
Well, Vice Mayor Klein has a question, so I didn't mean to jump the gun on you there. Go ahead.
No problem. I always have to reach over and unmute myself. So first of all, thank you, Maggie. This is awesome information, and I'm hoping you guys can send the deck out to us so we can share it with our partners. One of the things that I observed, and maybe you can tell me if I'm thinking in the right way, is with only 5% availability of everything, if you put it all together, there's if in years past, once upon a time, if you had a huge amount of availability, landlords weren't as actively evicting people because there was a lot of availability. So people would just go, okay, and they would move somewhere else. Now with minimal, and 5% to me is just like minuscule availability. I think there's an opportunity to increase rents if you move someone out. Yes. Depending on the situation. And so some of my constituents have not just fixed income, but income as a level that doesn't put them quite at the poverty level, but not at the I can afford what's happened now level as a changeover. And do you think that the investor market that's come in and scooped up practically, I think at one point they thought they were going to be able to buy stuff and then turn it. But then I think in some ways they bought stuff, took it off the market and are renting it out, but they're not renting it out at the rates that were being rented out before. So do you think the investor market has had a big impact on the amount of availability that there is countywide?
Yeah, definitely do. That's definitely put a lot of pressure on the pricing. With what I showed on the cash sales, and then just in general, how much of our housing stock is being, eaten up by investment from out of state and out of nation even. We are seeing that they are buying up multiple properties and then they're either sitting there empty or renting them out for higher prices. So that definitely is a factor.
It's a great question.
Thank you very much again for everything that you've provided to us. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So
it's a lot. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's an outstanding question. We talk about the BlackRocks of the world, et cetera. Maggie, do you have a slide or any information on the institutional investor scooping up? It's a great term for it, inventory. And then, ultimately, then, they're kept whole on the backside when somebody moves into the poverty level because of housing prices and CPI going up. Well, the federal government subsidizes that and then goes straight to the landlord. It's a great investment, for a group like BlackRock. They're going to get paid either way. Do you know what those numbers might be?
Oh man, so I had to remove that from our slides just for time. It is something we've looked into. I want to look it up. I'm not on my machine at this time, but would love to get back to you with that and perhaps include that, when we are looking to publish this analysis on the web and then update it either quarterly or twice a year. So that's something that we'll make sure to include because we did pull numbers on it. So thank you for bringing that up. Apologies, I don't have it at this time.
Certainly. Okay. Is there any other?
Chair, can I add one comment?
Absolutely.
When this data was presented to regional council, primarily mayors, tribal leaders across our region, there were audible gasps in the room, which was fascinating as someone, I think it was just really interesting for everybody because I think the data presented is so stark. And one thing I wanted to point out that I just want to keep in the back of everyone's mind. It's something like, and Maggie, please correct me if I get this wrong, but if my memory serves me correctly, it's 35% of purchases right now are all cash purchases, which goes to show you the investment side of real estate in the Valley versus what the average person who's working for minimum wage or living in that $39,000 to $50,000 a year budget could afford.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it goes back to what, full circle here, that you follow the money, right? And this is a broken system that's only going to be solved by free market solutions, right? We just need inventory. And, I know that there's a buzz out there of laying the blame on this at the feet of city councils. We've all heard it, that, our processes or our NIMBYism or whatever you want to call it is the reason for this crisis. It's just not, right? And I'll go on record as saying that it's a deeper issue than that. And I'll keep coming back to the fact that, if I'm the division head of BlackRock and I look at the job creation that's going on here and the overall increase in population, I'm going to invest in this community. And then I know that when those residents move into the poverty level and they're eligible for subsidies, my rent's going to be kept whole so I can keep raising it. And so that will those rents will continue to move up until we solve the inventory issue. And that comes from, I don't know, we just need more builders, I guess. But anyway, that's my soapbox. We have another question?
Yeah, this is Councilwoman Janik, if I may go.
Absolutely.
Okay. Common theory is that if you build, prices will go down. But yet I thought I heard Maggie say that as we build, the new apartments coming on the market are more and more expensive for their rents, which seems to indicate that the type B and type C and the older units can then raise their rent. Can you comment on that, where we are in that cycle? And if you feel that build, new, everything is luxury. If you build more luxury apartments, eventually the rates will go down. I'd be real curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I don't want to speak on behalf, but yeah, we are seeing that so many of the new builds are luxury. And so the price is going up. What we really need is more builds that are affordable. And so that's a whole other story, right? A whole other game. We did also take a look at new and existing construction just in terms of single family housing. And it seems like while in the past new construction was, there was a large gap, new construction was higher than existing, they've kind of merged in the past year. We know that could be changing in the next few months. So that's why we didn't include the slide here, but that's something we're keeping an eye on as well.
And have you seen that with apartments too then? That the rents for apartments are also increasing as new apartments come on board, or not necessarily?
We're still seeing just a clear gap there, whereas for the single family, for the housing, they're kind of merging.
Okay.
So yeah, we're keeping an eye on it for sure. That's a great point. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Thank you. Vice Mayor Klein, did you have another question? All right. Well,
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say I did manage to log into my system. I was pulling up the institutional number, if you were still curious about that. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so based on the analysis we did, so this is from 2020 to now, 14% of total sales were those institutional buyers. So we're continuing to track that. We'll hopefully include a slide or something showing that trend when we eventually publish this on the web.
Oh, great. Well, on a good note, I did hear that the BlackRocks, and there's another group that does it as well, actually froze their purchases last month. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Lumber prices are coming down, so maybe the wave from the COVID slowdown will start to catch up. We'll start to stabilize here. But anyway, like to be an optimist about those things, folks. Great questions. These are great topics for us to continue to share throughout the region. And it's good to hear that the mayors and other groups are hearing this data as well. So we're all sharing the same data. I think we'll move on to number 6, unless there's any other further questions or comments about topic number 5. Maggie, thanks so much. Okay, great. Any requests for future items? I know I have one on the board for Not in My City, Night of Hope. We'll fill you guys in on that one on the next meeting. Anybody else?
Chair, if I may make one other ask of the group.
Sure.
October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and the MAG Regional Domestic Violence Council coordinates a calendar of events each year. The form to submit your city or organization's events is available on our website. I will make sure to include that with follow-up materials from today. We know that many of you do things like light official buildings purple in honor of domestic violence, have city proclamations, et cetera. We'd really like to bring attention to those events, and we'd appreciate your help in filling that calendar. So when you see that link today, if you could pass it on to whomever in your office handles that, we would really appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
No, thanks for sharing. Any other ideas? Topics? Well, Kelly does a great job of getting some great information in front of us. So we'll lean on her for our next meeting. We'll hear from Night of Hope, hopefully. And if anybody thinks of anything in the meantime, certainly email in. Or if you hear something at your meetings or from your colleagues, we would love to be able to share that throughout the region. So with that, are there any comments, just at large comments from the committee? Vice Mayor Klein?
Yeah, I wanted to share a few positives. I guess that's good. We opened the first part of our new LEAF, West Valley Housing Assistance Center. That's our first step in doing transitional housing and coordinated entrance for families to be able to get services. 130 families were served last month alone through this location, and we hope to have our transitional housing late spring of 2023, so that we'll actually have some housing available for folks while we're looking at that. Our iHelp update, we had 2,500 bed nights offered through iHelp from July 1st through June, from July 2021 to June of 2022, and that program is really expanding with the Lutheran Services Group. And our Surprise Resource Center was able to assist 1,900 households under their CAP program for rent and utility assistance. The biggest demand has been for housing assistance. And our concern is that if we start to see less income allocated to that, that we will continue to have an issue with that as rents and things like that continue to go up. So we're still monitoring it, but we have been able to help quite a few people. The City of Surprise also provides assistance to the City of El Mirage. We have both of those funds together in one fund. So our resource center does both of those communities. So just some good news that we're working really hard to see what we can do to help this. And I'll be reaching out to our fire and police department about the foster program. And I'm hoping that maybe I can get a presentation in front of the right people in the City of Surprise.
Chair, may I make a comment?
Sure.
Vice Mayor Klein, we are in process of gathering great stories and progress toward our Pathways Home regional plan to end homelessness. We would love to capture what you just shared with us about your new site and how many families you're hosting.
Okay.
We have asked our mayors to help us contribute that information, but I will follow up with you personally to try to gather that so we can promote what you're doing out in Surprise. That's great work. Thank you.
Perfect. Seth Dyson is the angel of all things good. And I know you know how to get a hold of him, but I'll be glad to facilitate it however I can.
Yes, he's pretty wonderful. His whole team is. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Well, fantastic. Well, you know what? Thank y'all for being here today and being a part of this. It's so important that we continue to share successes, identify our challenges, and continue to work as a team to try to help our community. So that's what this community is all about. So with that, we'll give you a few minutes back for your morning left. I'll take a motion for adjournment if anybody wants to make it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Betty Janik.
We have a motion to adjourn by Vice Mayor Klein and a second by Councilmember Janik. And with all that, if anybody does not approve, we will close this meeting. Take care.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Great presentation today.